usually are able to celebrate this time of year, which is essentially a prayer breakfast, roundtable conversation, which we typically have in person. But once again, due to the reality of the pandemic, we're not unable to do that. But after a conversation I had with Delgado Clark back in February, we thought it is timely that we shouldn't just pass by this time of reflection of the Passover and also Easter, but do gather and invite people to join us, speakers that are here, but also the people that are watching via the YouTube link. We thank you all for joining us this morning. And without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Heinrich. Heinrich is a pastor, serves as an educator, is also a medical professional, and has been very much in the center of our response to how we've been able to adapt and adjust to the pandemic, but also has been providing our church with leadership. So Heinrich, if you could start this also with a prayer, that'd be wonderful. And then we look forward to hearing from our Congressman Antonio Delgado.
Well, thank you, Johan, and good morning to everybody. Praise God that we can gather virtually like this, and I believe and hope that it'll be possible to gather face to face very soon. And I think the point of coming together is really to reflect over this past year that has been difficult. It's been a hell for many people. The pandemic, we've lost many lives. There's been many instances of service, of giving everything, the healthcare workers. Of course, there's been other troubles. We notice the uptick of violence in our country and even in our own communities here. We sure think of all those that are suffering the tragedy out in Boulder, Colorado. There's many things going on. But it's springtime. And for us that believe in Christ, it's the Easter season. We think of the death and the resurrection of Jesus. I know it's the Passover time for the Jewish people. So there's many reasons to come together and hope. I think that's the message as we come out of this pandemic, of gathering back together, of finding strength in community, in each other, and building each other up. And so thank you all for gathering. I thought the Reverend Delgado Clark and Johan put together a wonderful letter of introduction, kind of giving the spirit of this. I just like to read that passage they picked for the beginning. It says, "And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together." So that's what we're doing this morning, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. So that's the point to, I hope everybody leaves this call encouraged, and we pass that encouragement on. There's also a wonderful passage in the book of Romans about how suffering can produce perseverance and character. It says, not only so, but we give glory in our sufferings. That's sometimes difficult to do. We give glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance character, and character hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. So this is a season of hope. I feel we have to, with God's help, overcome the difficulties and help each other. And we're really looking forward to hearing from each of you that have come together this morning, from the faith leaders, from government leaders, from our schools. Our children have borne this difficulty probably the most in our society, and we should have that on our hearts. How do we help our children and help families and help parents to nourish and to educate our children, to allow them to come together as much as possible, whether it be in the classroom or outdoors or sporting events or community service events? How can we help our impoverished communities, the people without homes? There's so many different things to think about and to care about. And we want to hear from each of you, both your burdens, but also the reasons for hope and different ways that we could come together. So let's start this with a prayer together. Dear Lord, we thank you that we can gather today with people from all over our neighborhood and communities. And we ask for your spirit of encouragement, of hope, looking to your coming to help us, the resurrection of Christ. Help us to discover how to build communities, how to overcome all the difficulties that this pandemic has brought to us, also the violence and the unrest and the injustices in our communities. Help us to come together as a people in love and in true community. This we ask and bless this time together this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. So Johan, back to you, and we're looking forward to hearing from each speaker today.
Thank you, Heinrich. And thank you for those words. And Congressman Delgado, if you're online, I see you there. Thank you very much for taking time this morning. It's a pleasure to see you, and really everyone that's on today. And so please share your thoughts, and also if there's any updates you want to give us. But I also want to thank you on behalf of the citizenship for representing us down in Washington during this difficult era.
Well, Johan, thank you. Johan, thank you very much to the Bruderhof community, to Pastor Heinrich, to everybody, who has come together this morning. I hope you're safe. I hope you're healthy. You mentioned give an update, but I think really what I came to do was speak to what this moment is all about and what we're doing right now as a community to lift each other up, to tap into our shared connectivity grounded in a higher power. And whether you do that in a synagogue, whether you do that in a church, whether you do that in a mosque, whether you do that meditating in your house, tapping into that power in moments of struggle is critically important. Whether you're an elected official, a spiritual leader, if you run a school or a charity, we're all public servants. We're all here to serve each other. And we all served each other during these incredibly challenging times. A year that, at least in my lifetime, has been like no other. You've worked around the clock to serve your communities, to help folks put food on the table, to provide faith when it felt like faith was impossible, to connect small business owners with necessary resources to keep their American dream alive, to be there for young people as they miss out on some very formative moments in their lives. But I also want to note that it's not just elected leaders or folks on the ground who've been doing this for some time. Every day, folks from all walks of life have stepped up to help each other. Whether you're a neighbor, a parent, a family, a sibling, a student, everybody has found a way to show compassion and to find strength from within. Grandmothers sewed face masks when supplies were low. Kids made signs for first responders. In fact, my office, we hosted a holiday card and Valentine's Day card program. And the outpouring of love and support, hundreds upon hundreds of cards delivered to our office with messages of resilience and kindness. Folks flocked to Ulster County's Project Resilience to distribute food to their neighbors. The People's Place delivered assistance to Ulster County's residents who lost their jobs. Everywhere you looked, and in every corner of our community, you can find the spirit of generosity. You can find love. And listen, if you've heard me speak before, you know that I believe love is the answer. The scriptures tell us, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Now, this is not easy. This is a demanding love. It requires one to get beyond their ego, to truly see oneself in the other, to see yourself in everything by virtue of the higher power that is in all of life. And so it's a demanding love. It is not an easy love. I believe, as Dr. King once said, I'm not speaking of some sentimental and weak response. I'm not speaking of that force which is just emotional bosh. I'm talking about a strong and demanding love. I'm speaking of that force which all of the great religions have seen as the supreme unifying principle of life. And we have lived and continue to live through one of the darkest times in our country's history. It has been a coalescence of loss, inequality, and conflict. But love through all of this is the answer and will remain the answer to this unbearable question at times of how we move forward. Fierce love, love that requires service and sacrifice in the midst of pain. I'm so honored, and and humbled to represent a community that understands this, that acts on the power of love. We have no doubt a long road ahead of us, not just to return, quote, back to normal, but to build back our communities, our neighborhoods, our economy better, to really grow in our faith, in our trust of each other. And as I look upon all the local elected leaders, all the folks who've invested themselves in our communities for years, I know that we will continue to be there for each other, continue to love one another. And if we lead with love, all things are possible. Change is possible. Equality is possible. Justice is possible. So I want to thank you all again for your commitment to service during this challenging time, and to everybody who's out there listening and watching. I love you, and I will continue to serve you for as long as you allow me to do so. Please stay healthy, look out for one another, and God bless.
Thank you, Congressman. And we had our sheriff, Juan Figueroa, was going to join us, and he just sent a message. He's having a little technical trouble. So Yael, Pastor Rabbi Yael Romer, thank you very much for taking time to join us and representing your congregation, Emmanuel, of the entire Hudson Valley. And I understand that you were taking a week off, but really appreciate that you took some morning time to join us and share your thoughts and words of reflection and strength for us. So over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Boker Tov. I know that I've been asked to join this roundtable to bring a Jewish perspective. In these days before Passover, it's traditional for Jews to engage in a process of clearing out chametz, removing leavened bread from our homes, our communal spaces, and even on our person. As I observe this ritual of preparation, I remind myself that chametz is so much more than leavened bread itself. It is symbolic of anything that keeps us from actualizing our best values. As we come together at this roundtable discussion, reflecting on the painful truths of having lived through the last year of a devastating pandemic, I recognize and honor the extraordinary, ordinary heroes in our midst: teachers, doctors, nurses, first responders, grocery staff personnel, all of those individuals who supported, responded, sustained, and protected us day in and day out. And I stand with the more than 30 million Americans who have contracted COVID, and those who continue to battle the longstanding effects of this illness. I honor the memory of the more than 543,000 Americans who tragically lost their lives to COVID. The pandemic has been devastating. But this morning, I sit with a different awareness. An awareness for which COVID is not the root cause. The pain and loss in our society has been amplified during COVID. Hunger, homelessness, inherent racism, inequity, loneliness, isolation, and the immigration crisis, violence in America. COVID's not the root cause of these things, but it is merely pulling back the veil on these painful truths, and it's forcing us to recognize the ills in our society that we repeatedly fail to address at their root. 54 million Americans are experiencing food insecurity. 18 million children in America go to sleep every night hungry. Today in America, an individual who works full-time earning minimum wage will not have enough money to feed her or his family. And this week, 8 people were murdered in Atlanta. 10 people were murdered in Colorado. I listened to the news coverage and wept. I'm going to ask us this question. How did we let this happen? 30 million Americans have contracted COVID, and more than 500,000 have died. And there are states that are making it illegal to mandate masks. 54 million Americans are food insecure in the wealthiest nation in the world. And yet we remove legislation for a living wage from the relief package. Violence in America has become a way of life. The city of Boulder was barred from outlawing citizens from carrying assault weapons. And once again, we are sitting here when a man, a 21-year-old, began a shooting spree in Colorado with a weapon of war, an assault rifle. COVID is not the cause of food insecurity or inherent racism or the immigration crisis or violence in our society, but it has served as a magnifier, insistent that we no longer make accommodations for these ills. On Passover, we're not allowed to say our ancestors were slaves. Rather, we must say avadim hayinu. We were slaves. And this simple phrase insists that we take ownership for the experience of oppression. We must taste the bitterness and the pain in order to affirm that we will do it differently going forward. And I imagine that the families of the 18 murdered this week do not want to hear about anyone's right to carry an assault weapon, a weapon of war. How many more must die before we act on the most fundamental right of all Americans to live in safety, to go to school safely, to go to a shopping center and to houses of worship safely, without fearing that they will be gunned down, that we will be gunned down, as we stand at the apex of spring in our faith traditions, with the hope that we will overcome the devastation of the past year. I implore us to not invoke rhetoric and platitudes and stop there. Rather, let this be a dialogue and a moment that propels us to action.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. And also thank you for mentioning all those that we've lost this year. It's something which is going to continue to affect us, I think, deeply. And since you mentioned the violence, and which is also happening here in Kingston, Sheriff Figueroa, thank you very much for being here this morning. You and I spoke about the outlook, including the concerns you have with the pending eviction crisis. And if you could share your thoughts, we'd really appreciate hearing from you. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. And first, I want to thank the Bruderhof for hosting this every year. I think it opens the mind of the perspectives of everyone in our community, and it's great to see so many of our leaders on here as well. So good morning to everyone. It's been a challenging time, and Rabbi Romer, you're so right that the pandemic has really focused on a lot of our flaws, and there are many. And I believe that communication and understanding each other is something that we need to understand. We also need to know our self-responsibility and discarding of the broad brush approach to issues and problems that affect all of us today. And last year I did a survey at the county jail in regards to fatherhood, and we had 45 fathers that were in the facility, and the 45 fathers had about 148 kids. And I was thinking about the future of those children and what we need to do as a society to make ourselves better. I like living in today and tomorrow, but understanding and learning of what happened yesterday. I can definitely not change what happened yesterday, but I can do something today and tomorrow to make this place a better place to live for all of us, because that's all what we all want. We all want a place where we can live and have a family and be safe today and tomorrow. But again, communication is such an important aspect of who we are. And I think we all live in our own little areas. I call as you know, bubbles, if you will. We don't, get out of that safe space. And I think we should. I think we should understand others that don't look like us, that don't think like us, and see what their individual story is that led them to make the decisions that they make, whether they're bad or good. Because I think if we know and understand that, then maybe we can move forward with some sort of solution and not necessarily pointing the finger and complaining. When I look at things, I look at things as to not to point the fault of individuals, but to understand individual stories and to figure out a way to understand and make things better. What can we do better? And I think if we all have that mindset that during this time of renewal here in the springtime, especially coming out of an unprecedented pandemic on top of an opioid epidemic, I think that we can all, move forward and understand each other. Evictions are going to be a big issue here, not just in Ulster County, but throughout the state. And I know that the county exec's office is working on that, as well as our leaders that are on these calls, because that is something that has a domino effect from landlords, whether they're fair landlords or not, renters, whether they took advantage of the system or not. But we are going to be facing a list of things coming out of this pandemic, to include the uptake of crime that just occurred just this past weekend, from the shootings in New Paltz and the homicide in Kingston, from the hiker that fell to his untimely passing, to individuals that attempted suicide this past weekend. And this was the first nice weekend that we've had in a long time. And I'm preparing my staff and the people that I work with and talking with the other chiefs about what to expect for the coming year. And I really do think that we should be positive, and that we should have, I believe in the human spirit, and I believe that we can help each other. And so I'll end with that, because I think the spring is that of renewal, the same as a Passover and Easter. And I want to thank again the Bruderhof, and great to see all of the folks that are on here. But yes, these are some very challenging times, more than I ever would expected as I start my third year in office. So it's been quite the experience. But I think I'm an optimist, and I like to look at things on a positive side. And I think if we put the negativity and leave it on negative island, as I call it, and think that we can do things more positively and believe in the human spirit, then I think that we will be all the better for it. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate you taking time to join us this morning. And next up, we have our Senator, Michelle Hinchey. Michelle's joining us for the first time in this forum. And thank you for deciding to be a public servant and representing the Mid-Hudson Valley and the 46th District up in Albany. So good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Johan, and everyone so much for having me here today. I am incredibly happy that you had the conversation with Modelli to decide to do this virtually this year. I think it's an important discussion and a really important community that you foster, but really has never been more important to have this discussion during this year and coming together. So thank you for continuing to persevere. I look forward, while it's wonderful to do this virtually again, I really do look forward to the day that we can all join together in person and fully reintegrate the power of human connection back into our daily lives. And I think, as the sheriff said, with the weather, while that will present its own challenges, we will be able to get back to a sense of connection. This has been a tremendously challenging year for all of us, but especially our frontline workers who have really carried us through this crisis, putting themselves at great personal risk to keep our communities moving and ensuring that we continue to have access to the basic necessities like food, public transportation, and of course, healthcare. Our hearts are also with those among us who have lost someone to this virus, and to all, especially our nursing home and long-term care residents who have suffered through prolonged periods of isolation and have not seen their families for months at a time. I have to tell you that when I started our campaign for office back in July of 2019, I had no idea what was in store for us. No idea that we'd be starting this journey through a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic that would fundamentally shift the world as we know it. It's definitely been a challenging year to join the New York State Senate, but it's also never been more important for our communities to have advocates at the table in Albany fighting for us in these moments that matter most. This pandemic has forced us to look directly at the cracks in our system and laid bare the systemic inequities that have been buried just so shallowly under the surface of our everyday lives. We can no longer look away at the inequities of our healthcare system or at the disproportionately adverse effects of this pandemic on our minority and rural communities, or stop working to unite our deeply divided country. This is a moment where we have to take a hard look at ourselves to identify our values, and as the Empire State, determine what kind of leader New York wants to be and really should be. Despite all of the darkness, we have witnessed a beautiful coming together during this pandemic, as the Congressman touched upon as well. Our Bruderhof community in particular has been profoundly important in getting us through these uncertain times. You embody the spirit of what it means to be there for your neighbors with a commitment to public service that is inspiring and incredibly worthy of recognition. I believe that everyone on this call embodies that spirit of public service, and we are so lucky here in Ulster County to have a community that lifts that up every day. The only way forward is together, which is why it is so important that we continue to be there for one another, standing up for each other when we recognize inequity, and fighting together shoulder to shoulder to make the changes that we know we deserve to see. We talked about a couple of the things that are going to be incredibly challenging this year, but I do think that here in Ulster County and the people on this call are really spearheading some of the incredible initiatives that have been profoundly vital to getting us through this moment, as well as really beacons of light across the state. For people recognizing what we're doing here in Ulster County with Project Resilience, with the communities coming together, even with the Black Lives Matter marches and our law enforcement community walking in partnership. We were one of the first communities to do that in that moment. And I think we really show what it means when we all come together and how much stronger we are as a united force in these moments. We saw through the pandemic how incredibly important what the real benefits of our small communities are. It truly means neighbor helping neighbor, standing together, looking for ways that we can support each other during these incredibly challenging times. So I am very thankful for this discussion, for bringing everybody together in this moment to recognize not only the profound loss that we've experienced over the past year and the trauma that has really inflicted upon our communities, but to look forward and to see how we can all continue to stand together and to work together to not just support each other in this moment, but to really build the society, to build the community that we all know that we want to live in. So thank you for fostering that, and I look forward to working in partnership with you to make sure that we can do that in the years ahead.
Thank you, Senator, and really appreciate you took some time this morning. And now is Imam Khalid Khan with us today? I'm not quite sure if you're on the Zoom, and if not, Pastor Eric Mercado, would you mind stepping up and sharing your thoughts? And then after that, we're going to hear from Senator Mike Martucci.
Yes, good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me. For me, it's a good opportunity to express what we live as a Hispanic community. especially in this time of crisis. I've been seeing so close the Hispanic community is being affecting a lot by the COVID as everyone. But also on top of that, we're seeing different barriers and things that is making everything more difficult. And then, but I believe that we getting together and then try to help each other, it will help us to overcome these problems. It's a passage in the scripture in Exodus 12 that God gave instructions for the Passover and says, when the family is too small to provide themselves for the lamb, you have to invite it, the closest neighbor have to invite it to the house. So, and this is something that we have to do. There is people in our community that doesn't have what we have, or we can help to provide them to invite in our abilities or the provisions that we have. And then as an immigrant, I came 19 years ago, and this country embraced me. And I thank God for that. Now I'm a U.S. citizen, and I try to give what I have been received. And then I can say this: when you help somebody else, that person is a change reaction, and then make other people help each other. And then in this time of need, I believe that we need to help each other. And then that will we accomplish more. And I encourage everyone, the political leaders, spiritual leaders, that we can put an extra effort to do this. There's people with no insurance, people that have been suffering by the way the landlords are treat them and everything, the economy, cases and immigration is being stopped because of the pandemic. It's a lot of going on in the Hispanic community. So I just want to say thank you too, because all the efforts and the work that you already is being done in trying to accomplish. And then thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Pastor. And thank you for joining us today. And also joining us for the first time is Senator Martucci. And like Senator Hinchey, you're new to the service of public service. And we really thank you for deciding to do that and representing the 42nd District down in Orange County and Sullivan and Ulster. So love to hear from you today and welcome.
Johan, thank you for having me. It's certainly my pleasure to be here. So as you pointed out, I'm fresh on the job, just a couple of months here, like Senator Hinchey. And certainly, I think what I want to start off with is a word of thanks not only to you but also to my colleagues, because being new here is a challenge in a regular year. And as I look around the screen, I'm so blessed to have been surrounded by wonderful people. County Executive Ryan, Senator Hinchey, who's new like me, Assemblyman Cahill, who certainly has understands Albany as well as anyone does. He's been here many years, and the sheriff and others who have been wonderful and have embraced me in this role and have been so helpful to me. So I think that, that really is an important piece, not only to what we need to be doing here, but a lot of what the pandemic's taught us. I think that it's taught us the importance of that we are our brother and sister's keeper, and that it is our responsibility to help one another, especially through these difficult times. Like my colleague said, it has shown us certainly, there's been much tragedy and much loss in this pandemic, but at the same time, we've seen the best of humanity. And I'm a member of St. John's Church in Middletown, which is close to where I call home, and we're involved in a number of different projects that I know many of these things happen in Ulster County and places around our state and around our nation, where we've seen religious groups come together to help with warming stations, which have been traditionally difficult to operate and to staff, but those challenges have only been magnified in a huge way by our pandemic. I know that you all have been contributing in big ways to help our homeless population. Certainly, now with the rollout of the vaccine, which brings so much hope to a safe reopening and a return to normal life, I know that your groups have been key in terms of spreading the word and volunteering, helping operate those vaccination clinics that are happening, again, all over our state and all over our country. It's such a key piece to what we have to be doing right now. But I think I think about Easter and Passover and the spring season that's upon us, and really what it all means for me, first is, this is our opportunity, certainly as people of faith, as a community of faith, to reframe these events in a very hopeful lens. Because now is certainly the time, and spring is the time when we can reframe what again has been a year of tragedy in a really hopeful way, and foster a sense of connectiveness, which is so important for us together to emerge successfully from all of this. And finally, I think it just underscores the importance of maintaining these connections, even if it's just this way, even if it's virtual. Maintaining a connection and the importance of those connections and our rituals, because it's what ties us all together. So as Senator Hinchey said, I certainly hope that in a year from today, we can be sitting in person doing this. I think we all hold that hope. And in the meantime, I thank you all for having me here today and allowing me to join you the first time virtually. I think it's so important that we continue to do this. And I certainly thank all of you for embracing me. I thank the folks who supported me and elected me for giving me the opportunity to serve. It's very humbling, and I look forward again to working with my colleagues and all of you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Really appreciate your words, and also your commitment to this area in the Mid-Hudson Valley. And moving forward, we want to hear from our Superintendent Paul Patellino, who's really been at the center of advocating for children here in Ulster County, but also in a certain way representing the least of those and the ones that are almost the most needy and certainly the most vulnerable during this time. And after that, we're going to hear from our pastor, Modeli Clark. So Superintendent, please take it away.
Thank you, Johan, and thank you for having me here again. I miss being in person as well, but it's great that we're able to gather at least in this way for now. I was grateful yesterday to have such a nice day, and I got home from work and I went and sat on my back steps and had a cup of coffee, and I looked down at the garden and the crocuses were popping up. And I sat in that same spot last year, right around this time, and I don't remember seeing the crocuses popping up. They probably did, but I didn't see them. And I think it's about perspective, and it's about hope. And I thought at that moment, I'm going to continue to look forward and have the perspective of hope and thankfulness. So being thankful for the spring weather and seeing the crocuses coming out and thinking of the hope, I'm thankful for all of the support that this community has given the school district over the last 12 months. Even up to just yesterday when I was able to meet with Pat Ryan and Mayor Noble and talk about what we can do about the gun violence in Kingston. And I'm hopeful looking at more of our students coming back to school, being able to go to a football game, be able to see our students enjoy each other's company and in a safe way, and participate in the things that they love. I was hopeful when I saw so many of our teachers, not just Kingston teachers, but teachers all over the county, streaming into the Kate Walton Fieldhouse to receive their vaccinations. And I think that my perspective has gone from one of worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow and worrying about how we're going to get out of this to being hopeful and knowing that we will get out of this. And we have moved forward together. So it's an exciting time. And while there's still a long way to go, and we still need to be safe and careful and vigilant, I think if we move forward with thankfulness and hope, that is what's going to get us through this. And that's what's going to help us move forward. And I think that's been one of the biggest frustrations, I think, for everyone. And as someone in education who we measure time, right? We measure progress, not feeling that we were moving forward, feeling like we were treading water. is frustrating for our students, frustrating for our faculty and staff, frustrating for me. But just that one moment sitting there, having my coffee last evening and seeing the crocuses, I thought, thankfulness and hope. That's what I have to move forward with, and I think that is going to get us there. And I'm really glad my perspective has shifted here in this special time of the year.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. And I want to thank you also for allowing the vaccinations to happen at the gym. And I also do think it's a good move that it's been relocated so that the students can start to utilize that space again. And I think play space is something we're going to have to think hard about in Ulster County. There's a number of challenges I'm aware of that we'll have to, collectively collaborate to solve. But that's for a different time. And Pastor Clark, thank you for your inspiration and collaboration on this morning. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And after that, our county executive, Pat Ryan, who's on, will be able to join us. So thank you.
Thank you, Johan, for allowing me to be a part of this inclusive event and to be a part of a program where we have a national, regional, and spiritual leaders participating. And today I want to reflect on my friend and colleague, Reverend Dr. Arthur Lee Costin Sr., because with so many deaths in the tens of thousands and suffering that has been going on in this past year, it's easy to become desensitized to death and suffering. And I didn't want my friend's death to be generic. So I wanted to talk about him a little bit. And as a colleague, he was hands down the most supportive pastor anywhere. I could always count on his presence whenever New Progressive hosted a second service or any church-related event. He'd be there and always dapper and lighting up the pulpit with his presence. Arthur Costin was a serenely generous man. Back in the day, when every church had its own van, New Pro was preparing to take a group of children and adult chaperones to the Empire State Youth Convention, I think in Albany. But we found out almost at the last minute that our church van wouldn't accommodate everyone. So here we were, one day to go. We were desperate and scrambling to rent, borrow, or steal a van. But God, because he didn't want us to sin like that, he sent an angel to rescue us. It was an angel in the form of the Right Very Reverend Arthur L. Costin. He offered us the use of his new 15-seat van for free. I gladly accepted and sent someone to get it before Reverend Costin would change his mind. He was also generous with his wisdom. About 30 years ago, as I was preparing to enroll in seminary, Arthur gave me some advice that kept me balanced throughout my seminary experience. He was a year ahead of me at the same institution. He said, "Brother Claude, before you take a single class there, you'd better be sure you know what you believe. They're going to expose you to some teachings and doctrines that will test your faith. Be sure your foundation is rock hard." He was so right. I was doing my usual exercise walk through my neighborhood the day after Arthur died, when the magnitude of his loss stopped me in my tracks, and one seemingly insignificant thread stuck out. Whenever I preached a sermon or made moderately significant statements, Arthur would inevitably say, Claude, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. To which I'd reply, man, you got to raise your standards. See, Arthur Lee Costin Sr. truly has raised his standards to unsurpassed levels. He has risen to glory with the Lord. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Clark, and thank you for also sharing your reflections on our friend and pastor, and someone that we miss, but also that we can continue to learn from. And County Executive Ryan, I see you there. Thank you very much for joining us. And I see you got your wonderful companion there with you as well. Good morning.
Whoops, you just knocked the phone out of my hands. I apologize.
Excellent. Hey, welcome.
I'm on.
And yeah, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm on dad duty at this hour, so I apologize. I have my special advisor here with me. This is Theo. Theo, say hi, buddy. Hi. Okay, I'm going to put him back down for Sesame Street. Hopefully that'll distract him. I apologize, everybody. I may have to go be very brief here. All I'd like to say is, oh man, Theo, come on, bud. Okay. All the parents out there hopefully can appreciate this moment. All I'll say is this: I'd like to just build on what everyone else said. Number one, and just thank you, Johan, and the entire Bruderhof community, particularly for stepping up this year in so many ways, between Project Resilience and manning our vaccination site day after day after day. The service of your community has absolutely saved and impacted tens of thousands of lives in our county. So thank you to all of you. I just want to share two moments from yesterday, actually, that I think build on what other folks have said. We, as Superintendent Patellino said, many of you on this line and others not on the line stood yesterday together in Midtown Kingston, a block from where we had our most recent fatal incident of gun violence. And this has been a difficult week at the culmination of an incredibly difficult year, manifesting in two of our young people, high school and middle schoolers, losing their lives to gun violence, one in December and one just last week. And obviously that is unbelievably, indescribably tragic. But I also walked away yesterday with great hope about our community coming together, saying enough is enough, saying we're going to take real action. We're going to take a different approach. We're going to open up our school to provide a safe place. We're going to work as a collective group with the sheriff and our other law enforcement to address the gun violence challenge. And we're just going to heal and show an example for our young people of working together. So I wanted to share that moment. And then the other moment I wanted to share is, and many of you have experienced this, either going to the vaccination site yourself or working there as a volunteer. And if you haven't volunteered, we're looking for more volunteers. But the moments that I've seen of people receiving life-saving vaccine, and many of them literally crying tears of relief and joy, to me really encapsulate the beginning of hope and the beginning of thawing and the beginning of coming out of a very dark period into a more bright and optimistic spring. And what I particularly want to share about our vaccination sites is not just the comments that we get about people getting this life-saving vaccine, but the majority of the comments that we get are about our volunteers, about our community members who are working there, many of them every single day for the last several weeks and months, putting themselves at risk and giving of their time. And the love and kindness and generosity and positivity of our volunteers and all the staff at those sites, I think in many ways is more impactful than the actual vaccine for those that are going through. And so my sort of call to all of us as we come hopefully out of this pandemic, but into a set of incredibly difficult structural challenges and problems we're going to face, from the opioid epidemic to housing, economic inequality and racial inequality, gun violence, and so many other things. Let's just continue to be human and take that moment to really connect, especially hopefully in person soon, to connect as humans and just not lose that in the midst of all the other poles and friction points that could allow us to lose our humanity. I'll end by bringing it back to my son Theo, who's thankfully stopped screaming now. I think about him, every single day he runs into something. he bruises himself, he falls down, he scratches his hands like a toddler does, but he gets right back up. He gets right back up with a smile, and he continues to have this trust and positivity and optimism that I think if we all could bring that spirit to the challenges we're facing every day, and remember that sense, we'll come out of this much better and more united. So thank you, Johan, and the Bruderhof community. Thanks to my fellow public servants and community leaders for everything you've done and that you're going to do. And I will end by saying, I know we're going to do this together next year, and I cannot wait to be with you all in person for this and for other events. Thank you so much.
Thank you, County Executive Ryan, and also please give Theo a hug from everybody and tell him to keep up the good work as your special advisor. He's doing a great job.
Thank you.
So at this point, we thought we're going to have our other county executive, Steve Neuhaus, join us.
I'm here, buddy.
Hey, Mr. Neuhaus, thank you for joining us. We just heard from Mr. Ryan, and your timing is perfect. So after we hear from you, we look forward to hearing from Shannon Kelly. So, Mr. Neuhaus, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, and good morning, everybody else. My colleague, Pat, up in Ulster County, and the Bruderhof community, all my colleagues in government and spiritual leaders. So, look, it's great to be here. I am excited about the spring. I'm excited about Easter, the resurrection. I kind of feel that's where we are. The last year has been difficult, to say the least. But I have a different perspective. I come from the military, like Pat, and one of the slogans that is entrenched in my brain is "No one is coming, it's up to us." Actually, it's on my backpack right here. No one is coming, it's up to us. And for the last 12 months, everybody was depending on the federal government, the state government. What are we going to do? It was up to us. And as a community, we all came together. Nurses work longer shifts. Doctors work longer shifts. Meals on Wheels programs, the ones that deliver food to elderly people in our communities, completely collapsed because people were getting sick or the fear of getting sick. But that job was still there, and it was filled by many different people of our community. I've seen the best of what human beings can be, of all different faiths throughout this crisis. I've also seen a lot of hope, right? I've seen us working shoulder to shoulder. I'm vaccinating just a few miles from my house today, 2,200 people, like I did yesterday, like I'm going to do tomorrow, like we're doing on Friday. When I say me, it's not me. It's about 100 people, half staff, half volunteers, and no vaccination clinic. And I'm not saying this, Johan, to blow sunshine. You know that. It's because of the Bruderhof. Every pod that I've done, the point of distribution, has been manned by a number of the men and women from the Bruderhof. They've painted my point of distributions. They volunteer. They do the vaccination. So we would not be able to do it, period, without you. It's not like one or two people out of 100. It's probably 25 out of every pod that we have. 25 out of 100 people are from the Bruderhof, and at least 5 or 6 of them are actually doing the shots themselves, which are hard to come by right now. I am also very inspired. Like Pat, I have a young family. I got 4 young kids. My 2 oldest are girls, 11 and 8. Every day they volunteer at the pod. They get their schoolwork done early so they can stay and work at the pod. And when it's time to come home, my wife picks them up or I got to drop them off. They beg me to stay. So I am inspired by everybody involved. I see it in my life. I'm lucky. 2 years ago, I was in Iraq. Facebook just reminded me 4 years ago today, I was in Korea. So the fact that I am here with my family, with wonderful people that are making a difference, it's wonderful. And look, as a county executive, we are where the rubber hits the road. Every day we're dealing with life and death. 2 days ago, a guy died in a trenching accident. We're reporting deaths from COVID. We're dealing with people. So it's not that we're immune to it. We understand it. I think more than a lot of people. We're talking to these people. We're talking to the hospitals. When this first came on a year ago, we were making decisions with the hospital to disconnect people from ventilators. That's real stuff. I had to order body bags. Pat Ryan and myself and the other county executives were ordering refrigerated trucks to store remains. So where we are today with the now giving a vaccine, which will get people closer to some type of normalcy and seeing people saved. I look at that sea of people, the 2,200 people that get vaccinated today. I literally sit there and watch this happening because, you know, as a boss, you walk around with a coffee cup as a good military officer. And I watch those people, and those are people that I'm not going to be reporting died in 2 weeks from now. And that's serious stuff to me. So to come where we are right now, heading into Easter, heading into spring and summer and wonderful weather, and seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, that hope, I have never lost faith because of the community that we live in that has really risen to the occasion. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you guys this morning. It's always awesome to be with all of you, and especially the Bruderhof, who has really made my life easier throughout this pandemic. So thank you, Johan.
Thank you, Mr. Neuhaus, and thank you for your words. And to the extent that we can continue to work together and serve and meet the needs, we certainly will. And in that regard, Shannon Kelly and the Catholic Charities have been doing just a remarkable job during this era of the pandemic. And Shannon, you see a lot of the need and also responding in a real practical way. And thank you and your colleagues for that. But if you could just give us a little insight of what you're anticipating as we recover, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Yeah, there's no doubt, as all the speakers have said, that there are parallels between sort of the Lenten desert and what we've experienced in this long time of isolation and plague of COVID, right? And as we at Catholic Charities look at the period of rebirth or Easter from our faith tradition, we're really looking at how the time of rebirth focuses on the most marginalized among us, because that's the only way we come out of this. And just as all the other speakers have mentioned, I think we're really focused on the homeless. You know, we see them at our warming center that we run in collaboration with Ulster County on a daily basis. We see that while the eviction moratoriums have been good in many ways, we're concerned about when they're lifted and what that looks like, particularly in areas of Ulster County or Kingston where there's really a housing crunch, a housing crisis. We're hopeful that we're taking a two-pronged approach to that, right? Working with people who are going to be facing eviction imminently, as well as those who over this period of job loss or loss of income have sort of racked up large amounts of debt. And what do we do with that, right? What do we do to keep them housed and keep them stable? So there's some support coming for that, and we're grateful. We're grateful to be a part of that. The hungry, we have seen their numbers in this time skyrocket. We went from doing, 90,000 meals a year to 170,000 last year. We've had to do them in different ways. We've had to distribute food. Yesterday, I was in Port Jervis at our drive-through pantry where, 140 carloads of people came through and, got probably 5 days worth of perishable food, produce, dairy, eggs, etc. The things that most of our pantries can't keep on the shelves on a regular basis because we don't have the space or equipment to do that. We are surprised. I don't know if surprised is the word, concerned, keeping an eye on the fact that so many people who never had to seek food before are now in the position to need to do so. And we're really grateful because there's been a lot of community support from the Bruderhof. Lots of folks on this call have come to our, drive-through pantries, our pop-up pantries. We work with the New York State contact tracers to get food delivered to homes for people who can't or shouldn't leave. But we think that's going to continue to be a concern, obviously, into 2021. Our immigrant community, as folks have mentioned, our paralegals and attorneys are really seeing an increase. I think it has to do with some of the changes, obviously, at the federal level, but an increase in concerns. What's my next step? Do I have a possibility of changing my status? And we're keeping an eye on the surge at the border. I went to the border in the summer of 2019 during the last surge. Catholic Charities deployed folks there and then strengthened our refugee resettlement and our immigration legal services programs here locally in the Hudson Valley. And so we're sort of preparing to do that in anticipation that the surge at the border, the surge of unaccompanied minors will eventually see their way here, to our communities, and we have to be prepared to welcome them, to integrate them, to assist them. And then I would just say, a long period of isolation, of grief, the experience of losing relatives and friends, and dealing with long-term illness, all of that in COVID has had a substantial impact on folks' mental health and their use of substances. And so the other thing we're really working on is a lot of suicide prevention work, a lot of work on how behavioral health treatment can be most available to as many people as possible in as many ways as possible. Telehealth has been a blessing during this time, the ability to meet with folks who are struggling just the same way we are all meeting today, but it is not a tool that works for everyone. And just like, the mission statement of this meeting talked about the lack of hugs and handshakes, I think for people who are really struggling with substances or struggling in their own recovery, not being able to meet in person has taken a toll, and we need to look at ways to get back to that. So I'm hopeful, I'm very hopeful, I'm very encouraged, but conscious that we can only emerge from the Lenten desert as a community and with a focus on the most vulnerable among us.
Thank you, Shannon. And please also reach your colleagues and pass on, this gathering's regards to them. And now someone that's been through the thick and thin for going on 30 years, also representing us up in Albany, is the one and only Mr. Cahill. And Senator Cahill, thank you for taking time with us this morning, and also for standing by over these many years, particularly this last year has been tough. And after that, we look forward to hearing from our pastor, Randall Geiger was serving for 20 years or more down in Australia, and he's relocated up to Walden, and will be serving also as a chaplain to the Newburgh Police. So as soon as Mr. Cahill's enlightened us, Randall, if you could, wrap this up with your thoughts and a prayer, that would be wonderful. And we may actually get out of here before 9:15, which would be great.
Hi, Johan. Hello, everybody, and hello to my colleagues in Albany and in our county governments as well, especially my good friend, Juan Figueroa. He and I have spent a little bit of time exchanging emails about what's going on in the world, but mostly just to check in on each other. So everybody found a buddy during COVID. Juan was one of mine. I want to just reflect before I start, and only take a moment or two, on Theo for just a second. When I was going to St. Mary's Church down on Lower Broadway, there was an organist who brought their baby to church with them. And when Father John would give a sermon, the baby would compete with Father John. And the louder he spoke, the more the baby screamed. And many people in the church were disturbed by it, but I heard that baby, and I heard that baby and other babies crying or talking out of turn in church. And I thought to myself, every time I heard them, that's our future. and how grateful I was to hear them. And it always put a big smile on my face. So thanks, Theo, for putting a big smile on my face today. Also, I'll just comment on my background. My background may be familiar to Reverend Clark. It is the perspective of the artist Todd Samara from pretty much the New Progressive Baptist Church toward the bridge. And we also lost Todd this year, in September of this year, not to COVID. He had been sick for a while, but he was a great contributor to our community in many, many ways. And I think it will be remembered along with all the other people that we lost in 2020, including Reverend Costin. And I will just add to that right now, if you enjoyed, and I certainly did, Reverend Clark's story about Reverend Costin, I recommend a really good book called Story from the Pews. I went to go find it and I couldn't because I remember that I lent it to my brother. But it's by Pastor Clark, and it's a great book, and it's maybe mostly sermons, but it's also terrific insights into people. A year ago, we were facing a frightening time. We were looking into the unknown. We didn't know what we were going to confront. We were all confused. And every single day seemed to present new challenges. Every single day seemed to present new challenges. But we immediately joined arms as a community. We immediately joined arms as a group of people who have known each other as neighbors and friends and sometimes relatives. And we decided we were there to help each other. We reached out to people we might not have known before, and we helped them. And in many, many instances, maybe far too many instances, we also accepted help. And that was another gratifying portion of what we went through last year, was we saw people willingly accept help. Many, many who have never asked for help before in their lives came forward and said, "This time I need you." And we were there for them. And to that, we owe each other a great debt of gratitude. But we also can sigh a breath of relief that we were there for each other. The coming days, although we think they are going to be filled with promise, and they will also have challenges. While we faced the unknown a year ago when we were going into COVID, we didn't know what we were going to confront the next day, and we improvised. And we got by, and we were really thrilled when things worked out the way they did. We know what we're going into now. We know we're going back to normal. We know we're going back to normal after we've identified some of the weaknesses in our society, some of the needs that have been unfulfilled, some of the challenges that were unmet. And now we're going to go back to a society where maybe they're not going to get the kind of emergency attention that they were getting this year. And we also have some damage done. We have damage done through the poverty that was brought about because of this horrible pandemic. We have damage done because of the isolation that came about because of this pandemic. We have damage done because many of the portions of the fabric of our society were torn apart during the COVID pandemic. So our challenge ahead is to recognize that it's not all going to be rosy. It's not all going to be easy. But if we join together the same way we did 1 year ago and over the course of the last year, we can not only get through it, we can thrive. We can be a better society for it. Like everyone else who spoke before me, I am in such deep debt to my friends and neighbors. I have such gratitude for the leadership that's been shown, particularly by our county executives. And quite honestly, most of this fell on our county executives across the state of New York. I'm also grateful for the community organizations like the Bruderhof, like our churches, that gathered together and said, just tell us where to go, tell us what to do. And I'm grateful to our schools who stepped up and fed our population, who invented new ways to learn and new ways to teach, and who were there for us every single day. So I will end before we go to Randy and just express on my own personal behalf, and I think that of my family and the people that I come in contact with every day, my unending gratitude to each and every other person in our community. Thanks.
So thank you very much that I could be part of this. As Johan said, I'm relatively new to New York, having spent 17 years in Australia. And I'm getting to know the city of Newburgh in a new way as a chaplain there. But I would say, the Bruderhof does its little bit, but you all do your little bit. And together those things come together. And I think they multiply each other, especially when we do them together. And I know we feel privileged to work with all of you, and I look forward someday to meeting you in person. Some of the words that jumped out to me this morning were faith, hope, healing, coming together, not letting ourselves be isolated or divided by all of the issues and also rhetoric that is swirling around in our nation right now. And I feel that people of faith should break down barriers. My own tradition, Christian tradition, is a message that breaks down barriers between people, does not erect them. And that's what I want to work for with all of you, and to make this world a better place. And I was thinking this morning, and I want to read a few verses from Psalm 91 before I end with a prayer. I found it encouraging. I hope it encourages each of you, written by King David. It says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart." So let's say a prayer to end our time together. Almighty and eternal Father, God of us all, thank you so much that we could be together this morning to share and encourage one another, to remember all those who have suffered and died in this last year from violence, from pandemic, and who still are in danger and who still face so many challenges and often lack hope. Help us to go onward together, knowing that you are our refuge and strength. We can trust in you. We thank you for all the men and women who have given their lives to serve the needs of others, those who put themselves at risk every single day. Be with them and protect them. Hold us together. Help us to be faithful people with a message of hope to this world. We honor and praise your name, our God and Father. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Randy, thank you very much. And Albert, at this point, I think we can all leave the meeting unless Pastor Clark, do you have any further thoughts you want to share with us, since you're one of the founding fathers here? I think you're on mute.
Until Pastor Clark comes on, it's a happy birthday to Randy. It's Randy's birthday today.
Thank you, Heinrich.
All right. Well, with that, I think we can wrap this up. And thank you, one and all, for joining us. Also, for those that are viewing on YouTube. And I sincerely hope when we have the inspiration to do something like this again, we can do it in person. But if not, at least we know we can do it virtually. And thank you all. And please greet your staffs, your colleagues, your families, and happy Passover and Easter to you all. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.